In today's video, we're once again going to play around the NHL Draft Lottery simulator through the website tankathon.com. We're going to run the simulation, see which teams are going to pick in the top 10, and then we're going to complete a mock draft and take a look at what players will be going to those teams based on NHL player prospect rankings as of today. We'll get into all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned, today we're going to once again play with the NHL Draft Lottery simulator and to see what teams might actually end up picking in the top few selections and complete a mock draft for the top 10 players selected in this year's 2019 NHL entry draft being held this year in Vancouver. Now, we did one of these simulations a couple of weeks ago, and at that point in that video as well, we also explained how the order of selection is determined, and we also explained the odds for every team being able to win the top pick or the top 3 selections here for this. So if you missed that video, I'll link to it up here in the YouTube cards, and you can go back and watch that if you want to see the other components here to how all of this is determined. Obviously, all teams who miss the playoffs are put into the draft lottery. They all have different odds to be able to win the top 3 selections. Obviously, the lower you finish in the standings, the odds are better, etc. And then after that, the draft order is determined based on standings. It's just the top 3 selections that are drawn at random based on your selections here for where you finished in the standings. So let's take a look how the draft lottery simulator worked out here for today. Now, as you can see on the screen, the team that was lucky when I ran the simulator this time was the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the Canucks have not had a whole lot of actual success with the draft lotteries in the past. More often than not, they've ended up moving down. And how cool would this be for them to actually end up with this top selection, considering they have Jack Hughes' brother Quinn Hughes already drafted in 2018 draft and is likely going to be making his debut here shortly if they land this top pick and can draft his brother Jack Hughes. So obviously with the number 1 selection, the Vancouver Canucks would definitely select Jack Hughes from the United States National Team Development Program. Now these players here, again, this is just based on player rankings through this website. As of today, they do change all the time, but that's how this is determined. This is not necessarily my firm opinion on who these teams would pick. Once the draft lottery is actually completed, I will be doing some actual mock drafts and with my opinion-based picks here, not just based on simulations, because once we know the actual order, we won't have to run a simulator anymore, and I can just base it off player rankings on my own opinion here. The other teams in the top 3 that were lucky to get a top 3 pick were the LA Kings at number 2 and the Detroit Red Wings at number 3. The remaining teams here in the top 10 will be ranked based on order of current standings. Now, the number 2 selection, the LA Kings would certainly select Finnish superstar Kappo Kakko. Now, Kakko is a player we've discussed recently. We had a dedicated video discussing what he's accomplishing over in Liga, playing in Finland. He set some records over there, and for the fact that he's playing against men makes it even that much more impressive. This site here lists Kappo Kakko at 6'4", 207 pounds, just over 18 years of age. Many other sites will list Kakko at closer to 6'2". So I'm not sure what his actual legitimate height is here, but I've had some people point out that he's not quite as tall as this website seems to indicate. So based on watching his highlights and what I've seen of him, he certainly is a taller player for sure. But his exact height here, just wanted to point that out in case anybody sees this and thinks it's wrong. I'm not sure what the correct one is, but most sites I've checked around in a variety of references that I use for prospects, and most of them have him listed at 6'2". So we'll see about that. Now, the number 3 selection with the Detroit Red Wings would gladly select Russian prospect Vasily Podkolzin, who's a 5'11", 165 pounds, not quite 18 years of age, has been playing on a variety of teams this year in a variety of international tournaments. He certainly had some good showings at the World Juniors. He's played in a couple of different Russian leagues as well. It's certainly looking pretty solid, but I know some people look at his stats and are a little bit underwhelmed with the fact that he has bounced around so much. It's hard to gain chemistry with a lot of your teammates, but you can trust me in the fact that he's a very, very talented winger. The only concern, I guess, I could see him maybe dropping a little bit here would be the Russian factor and the fact that, there's no guarantee when he's going to come over, and depending on what team selects him, they have to be patient because he did make it clear he's likely going to play in Russia for at least 1, maybe 2 more years, maybe even more. It's hard to say beyond when he's drafted here. But he's a very polarizing figure in the prospect world right now for sure. There's a variety of opinions out there. That seems to be really high or not so high depending on where you look or who you talk to. Now, as I said, the remaining selections here are based on standings. The number 4 overall selection would belong to the Colorado Avalanche via the trade they made with the Senators for the Matt Duchene trade back before. They would select Dylan Cousins, a center iceman from Lethbridge in the Western Hockey League. Cousins, a pretty solid forward there with Lethbridge, 6'3", 176 pounds, would be an excellent addition to the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the number 5 selection currently would belong with this draft simulator to the New Jersey Devils, who would select defenseman Bowen Barham, who's definitely the top defenseman in this draft, from the Vancouver Giants of the Western Hockey League. Not quite 18 years of age yet. He's 6 feet tall, 180 pounds. Byram is, in my opinion, the clear-cut top defenseman. Now, as you'll notice here, there's 2 common trends in this draft, especially in the top part of it here in the first round for these top guys expected to go top 10. There's a very heavy focus here on the Western Hockey League. A lot of centers and a few wingers. This is not a very deep draft when it comes to top defenders. Byram is definitely the top guy. There will certainly be some other interesting defensemen go later in the first round, but the high end of this draft is mostly all forwards with a really big focus here on centers from the Western Hockey League. Now, the number 6 selection would belong to the Anaheim Ducks, and they would select a 6'4" center from the Saskatoon Blades, Kirby Dach. Dach's just over 18 years of age, having a very solid year with Saskatoon in the WHL, would be an excellent addition to a Ducks team who has some pretty decent center icemen, but they're all getting older and having a lot of injuries, and they certainly need to retool there, but they do have some younger centers that are intriguing as well. So hard to say, but either way, the Ducks could certainly use a guy like him in their system. The number 7 overall selection would belong to the New York Rangers, and they would select left winger from the Kootenay Ice, Peyton Krebs. Krebs is a little bit smaller, 5'11", 172, but it's a very offensively gifted guy. Playing on a team in Kootenay that's not overly strong. They will be relocating next year as well. So considering everything the team has gone through, Krebs has certainly been very impressive, though, in his draft year, managing to put up some pretty spectacular statistics there in the Western Hockey League. Now, the number 8 overall selection would belong to the Buffalo Sabres, and they have him selecting Matthew Boldy, who's one of the top goal scorers in the United States National Team Development Program. Left winger, 6 feet tall, 175 pounds, is committed to going to Boston College, so he will be playing U.S. college hockey for at least a short period of time. Hard to say when these guys go to college how long they'll stay. Sometimes it's 1, 2, 3, 4 years. You really don't know. But Boldy certainly has a knack for scoring goals, but he's probably the 2nd or 3rd best pure goal scorer, in my opinion, in this draft. Another prospect we've talked a lot about, Cole Caulfield, is definitely the top goal scoring guy in the draft. For some reason, it's not ranked top 10. A lot of prospect ranking services still have him ranked lower, but I can see him jumping up here. But that's a topic for when I do my opinion on where these players should be selected later on, closer to the draft time. The number 9 selection would belong to the Edmonton Oilers, who would select center iceman Trevor Zegras in the United States National Team Development Program. Another trend there, as you can see, a lot of these are American-born players who's committed to going to Boston University. Zegras has proven to be a really solid two-way guy with some pretty tremendous offensive skills as well. 5'11", only 159 pounds, so hopefully he can add some muscle and bulk up to that frame a little bit, but he certainly has a ton of potential and would be a great addition to adding some center depth to the Oilers. And the number 10 selection would be Chicago Blackhawks picking defenseman Victor Soderstrom out of Sweden, who's a pretty solid defenseman in his own right. Outside of Byram, he probably is the number 2 guy for defenseman in this draft. Like I said, it's not a defense-heavy draft like we've seen in some years. Lots of centers and a few wingers going here. And the top 10, certainly, once you get to the number 10 pick, or even number 9 and number 8, all the way down to like 12, 13, 14, 15. There's a handful of players, in my opinion, that are kind of interchangeable. And obviously, when you get to that stage of the draft, you're picking more about team need more so than the best player available. But overall, Victor Soderstrom would be a great addition to that rebuilding defense for the Chicago Blackhawks. Obviously, last year they drafted Adam Boqvist, who's also a pretty solid Swedish defender in his own right. So certainly would go a long ways to help him rebuild this defense here over the next few years. So that is the draft lottery simulation and top 10 picks. Certainly let me know what you think and how things turned out. Let me know as well, what teams are you hoping to get the top 3 selections? And what do you think is most likely going to go down here at the 2018 NHL Draft? The actual draft lottery event's taking place on April the 9th. So between now and then, we likely will run the simulator, potentially 1 or 2 more times just to see how different scenarios unfold here. It's just fun to look at. Once that takes place, then we know the actual draft order. Like I said, I'll be doing some mock drafts closer to draft time. And in those videos, I'll be discussing what I think the team should do with more of an opinion-based mock draft instead of just based on player rankings. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there will be plenty of coverage on the 2019 NHL Draft coming up this June in Vancouver. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.